Back in December of 2020, I saw Chrome from Van City Van Life spray paint his van, so I was like, ooh, smart idea. So I went and bought 25 rattle cans of white paint and we painted my van. But we ran out of paint and I was leaving the next day to get on the road to start my van life journey, so we didn't have time to finish it. And all this time I've been wanting to repaint my van, but I just never had the time to do it, or it would be too cold or whatever. And I just felt that the van looked tacky, and since I've been in the van for a couple years now, the paint has started to wear off. There was no top coat, and so it just looked a little ragged. So I was like, one of the last things that I want to do on my van is to paint it again. And recently I saw that Chrome from Van City Van Life painted his van with textured paint. Now, I've had a few dings and run-ins with my van, so I was like, you know what, this might be a good way to go for a more rugged look. So I went on Amazon to look for textured paint, and I saw they had several different companies that sell Bedliner paint, and the top company is Raptor Paint, but that was a little too expensive for my taste. Now, before we could get to the painting, there was a massive dent in my passenger side door because I ran into one of those yellow pylon thingies at the gas station earlier this year that really smashed in my side door and made it look really terrible. So I took off the door panel, and with the help of my dad, we knocked it out as best we could. But because of the metal overlay on the door, it was really hard to get to from the inside. And I did try a couple of those dent pullers, and those didn't work at all. So we just tried to knock out the dent as best we could. It's not perfect, but it is definitely better than it was. Ah, whoa, whoa, whoa. See, what's happening is it's just making little circle dents.
That's all it's going to do.
You know?
That's all we can do with something like this.
Ay, ay, ay.
Let's move it over here and try to get around this one spot right here. Like I say, it's not going to pull this whole curve out. There's no way that's going to work like that.
Yeah. Not only did my crash at the gas station smash the stepper to get into my van, and that was probably the worst of it. So my dad spent a lot of time trying to piece this step back together because it was just too expensive and too hard to find a replacement piece. So he used this super glue and baking soda concoction that dries really hard. He also added a few screws, and the screws will give it a little bit of a grip as well. And we also added a metal plate to the bottom of the stepper, so when I step on it, it will be securely in place. The next thing I needed to do was to do a light sanding of the van because of the old paint, and there were some rust spots as well. So I went through and single-handedly sanded the whole van, which took me about 3 hours. Now, this is not something I should be doing because I'm recovering from surgery, but it had to get done before we could start taping off the van. I just used this little orbital sander and went to Harbor Freight and got 320 grit sandpaper, and that seemed to do the job. The reason it took extra long is because when my dad and I lifted the roof of this van, we fiberglassed it, and even though we did tape it off, for some reason a lot of the glue and resin dripped down onto the van body, and so there was a lot of little drips of excess resin that was stopping the paint from adhering from when we painted it before. So I had to sand those off almost to the metal. So there was a few spots that took me quite a while to do. Anywhere you see that it's extra silver is where all the little resin spots were, or rust spots. The next day, my mom and I taped off the van. We thought it was going to take 2 or 3 hours, but it took over 4 hours for both of us to do because we ran out of tape and ended up using this crappy masking tape, which we probably should have stopped and ran up to the store to get better tape, but we just wanted to get it done. And this was actually a nice day, pretty sunny, and I got sunburnt a little bit even because it was such a nice, beautiful day. As you can see, I'm wearing a tank top even. This is very upsetting. All the tape work my mom and I did, peeling all the way off. That's gone. That's gone. Oh, there it is. The back is pretty much the only thing that stayed. Oh no. Well, my dad and I were supposed to paint the van today, but clearly it's like gust winds. You can see by my hair, it's all over the place. So I thought I would take today to clean out the van and clean out the room I've been staying in. And it's just very cold and windy. This whole bag is full of stuff that I never needed in my van. I still don't need it. And that's just one bag. There was another whole bag too that I already took in. And every basket that you see in here is getting a clean out. And I already cleaned out all my clothes baskets. Oh, and one other thing I did, I removed the Zero Breeze AC unit from the back of my bed because it's winter and so I'm not going to be using the AC, and I just wrapped the two holes with some blankets. And getting rid of things I really never needed, thought I needed, or just things that's just I don't. And it's so windy. Look at the floor. I got tree branches up in my van. The point of my story is I'm trying to make the most of each day because I'm trying to get on the road in the next day or so. So tomorrow, prayerfully, this wind will be stopped. We can paint and then I can get on the road. So everything will be already set up. So we'll see. Oh Lord, please God, do not let it rain and mess up all of our taped off van. And I got a message on my phone that there was a wind advisory. Gusts of wind from 30 to 50 miles per hour winds that night and the next day. All I gotta say is praise God that it did not rain overnight. However, because of the heavy winds, a lot of the paper had ripped off of all the stuff my mom and I taped on 2 days before. So I got up super early in the morning, started retaping again because I knew the taped off areas wouldn't make it another day of wind. So the brand name that I decided to go with for the paint is called Speedo Coat, and it's about $150 per case. I didn't know how many cases I would need, so we estimated, just based on some of the reviews on Amazon, that we would need 3 gallons. I thought I could get away with 2 gallons, but I just wasn't sure. So I ordered 3 cases of white and 1 case of black because I knew that I'm only going to use the black on the trim. The kits are really cool. So each case comes with 4 canisters of paint and this activator. So you just load up 8 ounces of activator and pour it into the container of Bedliner paint and shake it up really well. You can buy the cases that come with a gun or come without the gun. So on one of the cases I ordered a gun. You just pour it in, shake it up for 1 to 2 minutes, and put the gun into the actual paint container. Now you will need an air compressor for this, and my dad had an air compressor, but lo and behold, it broke the night before we were going to paint, so we had to rent one from Home Depot. It was $25 a day or $18 for 4 hours, so we just rented it for 2 days. My dad already had a hose. Otherwise, you could rent a hose as well. First thing we did was start with a tack coat, and it covered pretty well right up front. And so we ended up using 2 full gallons, and it was probably about 4 coats total around the van. It worked really well. Even in the windy conditions, it went on pretty well. I think because it's a heavier paint, it didn't fly away so much. And we were really impressed with the coverage. Now, I did notice a little later in the day that after we let it dry a little bit, that it wasn't the best 100% coverage. We probably should have used the 3rd case, but in my mind, I was like, is it worth $150 to fix up some of these low coverage areas? To me, as frugal as I am, I was like, nah. And so I decided to just send the other case back and get going on the black strip. All right, this is what it looks like after the 2 cases were sprayed. I see a little bit of a shadow. Some shadowy parts that looks like it might have been missed, but we don't have any more paint, so too bad. It is what it is. But the texture looks really nice. Really nice. And some of those shadows are dents. But otherwise looks way better than before. So now we gotta let it dry, and then we're gonna tape off the bottom and paint the bottom strip black. If it doesn't dry by then, we're gonna have to keep the compressor for another night. So around 4 o'clock, the white paint was dry enough to paint, so we went out there and started taping everything off on the top. But it was just too freezing cold. Our hands were frozen. Everything was flipping around because of the wind, and it was just too hard. So we called it a day and decided to start again in the morning. But again, it was a super windy day, so it took forever to tape off the side of the van with plastic and paper. But we finally got it done and was able to spray on the black strip at the bottom. Now this black textured paint laid pretty quickly and very nicely, so we didn't need to use as much. We only used 2 of the 4 cans that came in the case.
I'm afraid to get the other side uncovered. Maybe we should just finish this.
Okay. Yeah. And we could have kept going, but it started to look a little cakey, so we didn't want to use too much and make it look bad. The major problem with painting this on a windy day is that on the passenger side, the sand started to fly around in the wind and landed on the step as it was wet. So there's some brown spots on the step. I guess it looks even more rugged. I was going to get some paint and just roller some on, but I was over it at this point and it looked nice the way it was. Now that everything was done, we didn't want the black paint to completely dry and not allow us to get the tape off. So we started to peel the tape off about an hour after we painted the black. I did not know what to expect, if some of the paint had bled through under the tape or whatever, but I just decided in advance that if that happened, I was just gonna go in with a little paintbrush and clean it up. But once I started peeling off the tape, it was a perfectly straight line. Yeah, the sand. Bam. That is unbelievable.
Makes the difference.
There's a lot of dust that flew on there. Thank you, Lord Jesus, that it turned out so well with all the problems we had with the wind. I was just like, thank you for this mercy. And after taking all the paper off, all the tape off, this is how it looks. To me, it looks 100% better than it did before. Is it perfect? No. Is it professional? No. But it looks a lot better than it did. And I love this textured paint. But one thing I am going to do next time I go back to my parents' house is I'm going to add some details up at the top just to add a little bit more pizzazz to the van. And I think I'm going to either texture the black part of the bumpers or repaint them so they look equally as nice as the black strip at the bottom. So the 4 cases of paint came to $648.15, and after I returned one of the cases, that took off about $170. So at the end, the paint total was about $475. Renting the compressor was $50. Tape and plastic and stuff like that was probably around, let's just say $25. So this total paint job came out to about $550, which is way less than what I was quoted when I called around. For a regular paint job, not even textured paint, I was quoted around $1,500 because it was a van with so many windows. And for textured paint, it just went up from there. So for $550, I think it was worth it. So if you're thinking about painting your van, I do recommend the Speedo Coat paint. I would just encourage you to try to find a day that's not too hot and not too cold, and I think you'll be happy with it.